In the grand theater of a human life, every quiet decision, every spoken word, and every action taken in the shadows of the everyday serves as a silent rehearsal for a much larger role. There is a profound realization that many encounter only when they are standing at the threshold of authority, that their entire history has been a meticulously constructed path leading them to become a leader. This journey does not begin with a title or a formal appointment in a towering office building. Instead, it starts in the small moments, the way a person organizes a group of volunteers on a rainy evening, the manner in which they guide a children's sports team through the sting of defeat on a weekend, or the patience they show while managing the complex, often chaotic, dynamics of a large family. Leadership is a force that exists in various forms and sizes, manifesting in the home region and across every continent, from the smallest startup where a single individual carries the weight of every decision, to the expansive boardrooms of global corporations in Europe or North America. The weight of this responsibility is often underestimated. It is an art form, the delicate craft of inspiring, organizing, and motivating others toward a common horizon. Whether one is standing in a quiet living room trying to bring order to the lives of their children, or sitting at the head of an executive council in a major city in England, the core essence of the challenge remains remarkably consistent. The world is currently in a state of quiet yearning, waiting for individuals who are willing to transform into the most capable versions of themselves. This need for genuine guidance is visible everywhere, like a persistent fog that refuses to lift. Governments often struggle to find a steady focus, not only for the communities they serve, but for their own internal stability, with many failing to even see their mandates to completion. Businesses, regardless of their scale, find themselves navigating a sea of unprecedented complexity and fierce competition, where management teams often gasp for air while trying to secure tangible results in a rapidly shifting landscape. Beyond the corporate and political spheres, the demand for excellence in guidance is felt in the pulsing heart of the public sector. Educational systems and healthcare facilities often operate at the very edge of their limits, burdened by a lack of resources and a desperate need for a clear, compassionate vision. Even in the most intimate corners of society, within churches or the very units of the family, the absence of strong, empathetic leadership can lead to a sense of internal warfare or a loss of faith. When one considers the figures of success that stand out in history, they might think of those with immense visibility, figures whose names are synonymous with global industry. Yet often the most impactful examples are those found closer to home: a former teacher who saw potential where others saw trouble, a local community leader who bridged divides, or even a partner who provided steady ground during a personal storm. The potential to become that admired example, the person others look to for wisdom and direction, is not a gift bestowed upon a lucky few, but a discipline developed over time. Many who step into these roles find themselves possessing a vast arsenal of tools that they never truly learn to use. They carry the weight of their potential, yet they often rely on a narrow set of habits while allowing their weaknesses to dictate the boundaries of their progress. However, there is a distinct difference between those who merely occupy a position and those who choose to embark on a journey of self-reflection and deliberate growth. It is a process of pondering how one wishes to evolve, how they intend to cultivate followers who eventually become leaders themselves, and ultimately what kind of shadow they wish to cast long after they have moved on. Every step forward is an opportunity to identify the missing pieces of a complex puzzle, exploring the depths of self-guidance, the purity of one's motivations, and the various styles that can be adopted to meet the world's demands. It is about learning to communicate with the resonance of a leader and to navigate the storms of change with a steady hand. The true mystery, however, lies in how one chooses to react when the path ahead is no longer straight, but winding and unpredictable, demanding a flexibility that many never manage to find. This leads to a critical question that every aspiring figure must eventually face. Is there a single way to lead, or does the secret lie in the world that surrounds them? Imagine a craftsman who enters a home to repair a variety of ailments. In his hands, he carries a heavy toolbox, the contents of which have served him for years. He approaches a delicate, cracked window pane and reaches for a hammer. He approaches a loose screw in a fine cabinet and again reaches for that same hammer. To this craftsman, every problem is a nail and every solution is a forceful strike. It seems absurd, a caricature of incompetence. Yet this is exactly how a vast number of individuals approach the complexities of human leadership. They treat every situation with a rigid, identical response, failing to recognize that the landscape of human interaction is as varied as the weather in the American continent. They ignore the fundamental truth that a diverse set of problems requires a diverse set of tools. When a leader uses the same style in every scenario, they are not being consistent, they are being ineffective. This rigidity is a quiet poison that slowly drains the vitality from a team, leaving individuals feeling misunderstood and directionless. This pattern of behavior is surprisingly common, even among those who have spent years in positions of power. It manifests in the way a supervisor handles a performance issue with an employee, using the same stern lecture for a seasoned veteran who is having a difficult week as they do for a newcomer who is genuinely struggling to understand their role. It is seen in the way incentives are distributed, assuming that the same financial bonus or public praise will motivate every member of a diverse team, regardless of their personal values or life circumstances. Perhaps the most visible sign of this stagnant approach is found in the way information is shared. Many rely on the same long, dense emails to convey everything from minor updates to major structural shifts, never pausing to consider if the medium matches the message. They react with the same predictable frustration when deadlines are missed, and they conduct every meeting with a mechanical adherence to the same script, regardless of the emotional climate in the room. Even in the subtle nuances of communication, the lack of variation becomes apparent. Clichés and rehearsed comments are used to express feelings that require genuine tailored empathy. Interview processes become a series of identical questions asked of every candidate regardless of the specific requirements of the role or the unique background of the individual sitting across the table. This one-size-fits-all philosophy is rarely efficient and almost never successful in the long term. When people are treated as interchangeable parts in a machine, they begin to feel lost in the gears. They may receive advice that is entirely inapplicable to their specific challenges, leading to a downward spiral of frustration and poor performance. The leader, in their refusal to adapt, becomes a barrier to the very progress they are supposed to facilitate. The consequences of this rigidity extend beyond mere inefficiency. It creates a culture of confusion, where the team is constantly trying to decode the leader's static signals to fit a changing reality. When a leader fails to vary their actions, they signal to their followers that the context of their hard work doesn't matter. This lack of nuance can be deeply demotivating, as it strips away the individual's sense of being seen and understood. The essential tension here lies between the comfort of habit and the necessity of adaptation. A leader who is unwilling to change their gait based on the terrain is destined to stumble, yet many cling to their singular approach out of a fear of the unknown or a simple lack of awareness. They do not realize that the most powerful tool in their arsenal is not a specific technique, but the ability to perceive the unique atmosphere of the moment and adjust themselves accordingly. The shift from a rigid commander to a versatile guide is the first major development in the evolution of true excellence, moving away from the safety of the hammer and toward the sophisticated understanding of the environment.
Deepening the understanding of leadership requires a shift in perspective, moving away from the self and toward the environment. There is a concept often described as a horse for every track, an evocative image that suggests the wisdom of choosing the right animal for the specific conditions of the race. Just as a jockey would not choose the same horse for a muddy, rain-soaked field in England as they would for a dry, sun-baked track in Spain, a leader must evaluate the track they are currently standing on. This involves a profound intellectual and emotional progression, moving beyond the superficiality of standard procedures and into the depths of situational awareness. It is a commitment to seeing the world as it is, rather than how one wishes it to be. This reflective approach demands that the leader stops acting on impulse and begins to act with intention, acknowledging that the human element is the most volatile and varied component of any endeavor. To explore this further, one must look at the emotional subtext that defines every interaction within a group. When a team member fails to meet a deadline, a rigid leader sees a broken rule. A situational leader, however, sees a symptom. They look deeper. Is this a person who has historically been reliable, now struggling under the weight of an unseen personal burden? Or is this someone who lacks the necessary training, feeling overwhelmed by a task they are not yet equipped to handle? The response to these two scenarios must be fundamentally different. In one case, the tool required might be quiet empathy and a temporary reduction in workload. In the other, it might be clear, structured guidance and a hands-on approach to training. By presenting the same face to both individuals, the leader fails both. This deep storytelling of leadership is found in these quiet moments of discernment, where the rhythm of the narrative is set by the leader's ability to pause and reflect before they speak. This progression also touches on the way inspiration is handled. Not everyone is moved by a grand visionary speech about the distant future. Some are motivated by the granular details of the here and now, the satisfaction of a job well done, or the security of a stable environment. Others are driven by the opportunity to innovate and take risks. A leader who speaks only in grand metaphors will lose the pragmatists, while a leader who focuses only on the spreadsheets will stifle the dreamers. The harmony of a successful team is maintained when the leader learns to play different notes, sometimes serving as the bold conductor, and at other times as the quiet accompanist. This requires a constant internal dialogue, a questioning of one's own biases and preferences. It is an intellectual challenge to remain flexible, as it is always easier to fall back on what worked in the past. In the diverse landscape of Latin America or Europe, the cultural nuances further complicate this need for flexibility. What is perceived as strength in one context may be seen as arrogance in another. What is seen as collaborative in one setting might be viewed as a lack of direction in another. The narrative momentum of a leader's career is often defined by these turning points, moments where they chose to listen instead of talk, to wait instead of rush, or to micromanage a critical detail instead of delegating too early. These are not signs of indecision, but of a high-level mastery of context. The rising tension in any organization often stems from a mismatch between the challenge and the response. When a leader finally understands that their primary job is to be the bridge between the situation and the solution, they begin to see the profound meaning behind their role. It is no longer about them. It is about the track, the horse, and the ultimate goal of the race.
The true climax of this narrative of adaptation occurs when a leader finally moves from theory into the heat of a critical revelation. It is the moment when they realize that being a leader is not about being a certain kind of person, but about performing a certain kind of action at the right time. This is the turning point that redefines the entire trajectory of their influence. Imagine a situation in a high-stakes environment, perhaps a company in a major metropolitan center in North America, facing a sudden, devastating crisis. In this moment, the standard tools of the past are useless. The long, carefully worded emails will not calm the rising panic. The usual weekly meeting will not address the immediate threat. The leader must undergo an internal transformation, stripping away their ego and their reliance on habit to see the situation for exactly what it is. This realization is often emotionally gripping because it requires a complete collapse of the self as leader persona. The individual must ask, what does this moment need from me? Sometimes the answer is a radical shift in behavior. It might be the realization that they need to step into the trenches, involving themselves in the smallest details of a project to ensure it does not fail, a form of micromanagement that they might have previously disdained. In another moment, the revelation might be that they are the biggest obstacle to progress, and the most dramatic action they can take is to step back entirely and do nothing, allowing the talent they have gathered to find its own way. This is the peak of situational intelligence, the ability to be a visionary 1 hour and a detailed analyst the next, to be a stern disciplinarian in the morning and a compassionate listener by the afternoon. This intensity is most felt when the leader must confront the uniqueness of the people involved. They must look at a collaborator and recognize their specific state of mind. Are they exhausted? Are they new? Are they overqualified and bored? The turning point is the decision to treat that person not as a role, but as a specific human context. This level of discernment is what separates the experienced leader from the amateur. It is a moment of clarity that changes everything. No longer do they ask, how do I lead? Instead, they ask, how do I respond to this? This shift in questioning translates the original tension of the text into a lived reality. It is a confrontation with the complexity of life itself, acknowledging that there are no easy answers and no permanent styles. As this revelation takes hold, the trajectory of the story moves from a struggle for control to a mastery of flow. The leader becomes like a seasoned navigator on a ship, adjusting the sails not because they have a favorite position for them, but because the wind has shifted. In the American continent or in Europe, the most successful figures are those who have mastered this art of the pivot. The climax of their journey is not a victory over an enemy, but a victory over their own rigidity. This transition into understanding brings a profound sense of consequence. They realize that their every move is a choice, and those choices have a direct impact on the lives and spirits of those they guide. The weight of the hammer is replaced by the precision of a surgeon's scalpel or the broad strokes of an artist's brush, depending on what the canvas of the situation requires. This is the point of no return, where the leader truly begins to earn the title they hold.
In the quiet aftermath of such a realization, a new kind of atmosphere begins to settle over the leader and their environment. The consequences of this shift towards situational awareness are immediate and profound. There is a visible settling of the emotional dust that once clouded the team's progress. When a leader begins to respond with nuance, the people around them stop feeling like targets of a process and start feeling like partners in a mission.
The confusion that once reigned when the wrong tools were used begins to dissipate, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. Internal transformations take place within the team members themselves. They become more engaged, knowing that their specific needs and the specific context of their work are being considered. The aftermath of rigid leadership is often a trail of burned out or disconnected individuals, but the resolution of adaptive leadership is a resilient, empowered collective. This settling period is also a time for deep integration of the lessons learned. The leader begins to see the world through a more analytical lens, one that prioritizes exploration before action. They start to use time as an ally, pausing to fully comprehend a question before offering an answer. They evaluate the history of an event. Is this a recurring issue or a unique outlier? They look at the players involved with a newfound depth, noting the experience level of a new hire or the mental state of a long-term employee who seems unusually demotivated. This is the quiet work of leadership, the part that doesn't make it into the grand speeches, but determines the success of the entire enterprise. The external transformation is a team that functions with higher efficiency and lower friction, but the internal transformation is a leader who has found a sense of peace in the face of complexity. As the narrative moves toward closure, the focus shifts to the infinite list of possible responses that are now available. The leader no longer feels restricted to a single path. They might decide to mentor someone personally, or they might call a meeting for a collaborative brainstorming session. They might ask how they can help, or they might choose to wait and observe, letting a situation resolve itself through the natural course of events. This versatility is the hallmark of a leader who has matured past the need for constant, visible action. They have learned that sometimes the most powerful thing they can do is use their presence to stabilize a room, rather than their voice to dominate it. In the home region and across the globe, this resolution leads to a more sustainable and humane way of working. This stage of the journey is marked by a transition from the how to the why. The leader understands that the ultimate goal is not just to reach a destination, but to do so in a way that preserves and grows the human capital entrusted to them. The emotional resonance of this phase is one of quiet competence. There is a sense of being in harmony with the environment, rather than at war with it. The leader has become a situational leader, a term that reflects not just a style, but a state of being. They are now equipped to handle the myriad challenges of the modern world, from the American continent to the farthest reaches of Europe, because they have stopped trying to force the world into their mold and have instead learned to mold themselves to the world. The aftermath of this change is a legacy of growth, both for the individual and for the many who follow in their footsteps.
To conclude this exploration of the leader's path is to recognize that the essence of success lies in the continuous pursuit of excellence through adaptation. The journey that began with the simple realization that all of life's experiences are a preparation culminates in the understanding that the most effective tool is a flexible mind. Leadership is not a destination one reaches, but a craft that is refined with every new challenge and every unique interaction. It is a commitment to never being lazy in one's response, to never falling into the trap of the easy, practiced habit when the situation demands something more. The final reflection of this narrative is one of profound responsibility. The leader is the one who must look at the track, look at the horse, and make the most informed choice for the good of all involved. In the grand tapestry of human endeavor, whether in the home region or in the bustling markets of Latin America, the individuals who are remembered are those who could be what their people needed them to be. They were visionaries when the path was dark, and they were detail-oriented when the margins were thin. They were the ones who realized that their power did not come from the authority they were given, but from the wisdom with which they used it. This philosophical closing brings a sense of clarity. The hammer is gone, and in its place is a vast, sophisticated toolbox of human connection and strategic response. The listener is left with the realization that they too possess this arsenal, and the only thing standing between them and the success they seek is the willingness to slow down, look at the context, and choose the right tool for the task at hand. This narrative leaves us with a quiet, inspiring message. Excellence in leadership is accessible to anyone who is willing to put in the effort that few others will. It requires an investment of time, a dedication to self-reflection, and the courage to change one's own nature to fit the needs of others. The emotional resonance of this final moment is one of empowerment. It is a call to move beyond the trivial and toward the important,
to transform the ordinary act of management into the extraordinary art of leadership. As the story of this chapter settles into the mind, it leaves behind a lingering question. What horse will be chosen for the next track? The answer to that question will define the legacy of the leader and the future of those they guide. It is a journey of 100 steps, each one a choice a reflection of the context in which we live. Ultimately, the path of the leader is a path of service to the truth of the situation and service to the potential of the people. By embracing the uniqueness of every moment, the leader ensures that no one is left behind, no problem is left unaddressed, and no opportunity for growth is wasted. This is the true meaning of success. It is not found in the grandiosity of the role, but in the precision and empathy of the response. As the narrative concludes, the clarity that remains is that of a person standing at the start of a new day, ready to observe, ready to evaluate, and ready to act with the nuanced wisdom that the world so desperately needs. The story of leadership is never truly over. It simply evolves with every new track, every new horse, and every leader who is brave enough to think in context.